Well, Clint, there are a couple of things that jumped off the page for me in your book, and I wanted to make sure that I asked you about them before we ran out of time.
Go.
One of the things that you were very intentional about saying in the book is that whenever possible, organizations should hire internally. Why is that so important? And how does it make people say, I love it here?
Yeah, growth opportunities, growth opportunities, growth opportunities. If your employees can't grow where they are at, they will go and grow somewhere else. And when you communicate that there's hiring opportunities
Mm-hmm.
internally, and we look internally first as an organization. My goodness, we brought you into our organization for a reason. Why would we not try to make sure that you thrive within this organization? You're a candidate that we appreciate, you're an employee that we value, and we want to see your success in the company. We want you to stay long term. And when there's not those growth opportunities internally, it's almost like you're sitting in a line at Disneyland, and you're waiting for hours and hours and hours, and then they just keep putting people in front of you.
Right.
They bring in people, they grab people from outside the park, and they throw them in your line, and you're like, why? And next time when you go on vacation, you're not going to Disneyland, you're going to Six Flags, right? It's that
Right.
mentality of, when we hire internally and we allow people to progress and we give them something to look forward to. I call it potential, right? There's got to be potential in your company. I think every employee should have a growth development plan. And that growth
Mm-hmm.
development plan should consist of an opportunity to be promoted if they want it. Some employees don't want that. They love where they're at, and where they're at is where they want to stay. But if they
Right.
want to progress, do you have that vision in place where that employee can actually become something in your organization, not
Right.
just be an employee?
And there's such a correlation between giving people those opportunities, but also making sure that those opportunities align with their strengths and their gifts and their talents, right? Our show just 2 weeks ago, we spent a lot of time talking about activating talent and why it's so important for people to get to do work that really aligns with what they're good at. And in the book, you call this giving people a chance to do what they do best. What kinds of conversations, you go into great detail in the book about this, and I would love to hear you talk about it for our listeners, about the kinds of conversations that bosses need to be having to make this happen so that people can do what they do best each day.
Yeah, that's a great question. And we saw this a lot in management where you would have a manager that had no business being a manager. They were put into a management position because the CEOs or the executives or upper management they were like, you were a really great employee. You sold a lot of stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
we want to promote you. We have no idea what to do, so we just promote you into management. But they have no strength of connecting with people. They don't want to connect with people. There's no desire. They're not looking at management as a stewardship position. They look at management as a burden. And so I
Mm.
think sometimes we have wrong people in these wrong positions. And then there's the ego that goes with, oh my gosh, if I get demoted as a manager, or we have the pay thing so I'm just going to keep running the show as a manager that hates my job.
Mm.
And so I think it's really important to ask the employees, like, what do you want to do? Like, if you could do something else in this organization that stirs your heart, that pulls on your heartstrings, that would allow you to do something that plays to your strengths, what would that be? What does that look like for you? Is this something in the company that you would want to grow into? Like, for example, we did a lot in fast food, and in that world, there's high turnover. But if
Right.
you can get an employee to stay for 3 years versus 3 months,
Right.
that's that's a win.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, it's a college job for them. They're going to school, and my goodness, if you can retain them for 4 years until after they graduate, and oh my goodness, if you actually have a conversation and you show them that there's a future, maybe they'll take that degree when they do graduate college, and they can continue to move forward. Maybe they own a
Right.
franchise. Maybe they become a district manager. I mean, you don't know that unless you ask them and also show them what those opportunities look like.
Right.
What do you do? What would be the idea of success, a perfect opportunity in this company for you?
Right. Right. Well said, my friend. Well, before we let you out of here, I want to tell you that I think my favorite part of the book is the story of Lee the Bell Captain. Would you take a few minutes to tell us about Lee and about his style and the kind of impact he had over time?
Yeah, Lee the Bell Captain he's incredible. He's still a massive part of my life. and has impacted more humans at work than I've ever seen. I mean, he just ate, slept, and drank and breathed good mentorship in the
Mm.
workplace. He understood the ability to become an advocate. He understood that he needed to get to the part about us as individuals. And we all knew that Lee had our back. We all knew that Lee cared about us personally. But we also knew that Lee had high standards.
Mm.
Those are two things in management that I think, and we were able to see in the research that if an employee was satisfied or dissatisfied with their job, I could always trace it back to those two variables: the standards that the boss had, or the standards the boss didn't have, or the connection piece that the boss
Yeah.
had, or the connection piece that the boss didn't have. Connection and standards.
Mm-hmm.
And he became that person who was equal in both.
Yep.
And in doing so, he became respected, not
Mm-hmm.
just liked, right? That he wasn't always liked. I'll admit that. There were some people that still had issues with Lee,
Mm-hmm.
but he was respected because he truly was that mentor. He had the confidence. He had the credibility. He was beautiful at having candid conversations, but he cared about us. He was the guy that would go and, break bread with us on the weekends and would come to family events. And
Mm.
he just took interest in our lives. He realized that we had a life outside of work. And he also realized that a lot of us might not stay in that position forever. And that if we move on,
Right.
we would have been, and we were, better humans because we met Lee the Bell Captain. And on the flip side, Joe, we've never forgotten him. You
Right.
ask every bellman that ever worked for Lee the Bell Captain, we all remember him. We cherish him. And so many of us try to emulate that with our relationships with our spouse, our relationships with our kids.
Mm.
His legacy impacts our lives on the daily because of who he was and how we experienced ourselves when we were with him. He became that iconic, legendary figure. He became the mentor.
And it's a perfect and beautiful story that demonstrates the example that it is possible to have high standards, to have high expectations, to expect people to give as much as they can in a role, as long as you, as a leader, are willing to give them just as much back in creating the kind of environment that will lead them to thrive. So
What a
it's a
concept,
wonderful
right?
story. What's that?
What a concept, right?
Right, right. Isn't that something? If we give it all we've got for our people, it's much more likely they're going to give it all they've got for us. Absolutely.